Right now, while you're reading this, there's a neighbor somewhere down the street listening to a dog bark. They know exactly when it started. They know which days are worse. They've heard things through walls that you will never hear, because by the time you walk back through that door, your dog looks completely fine. Calm. Maybe a little excited. Acting like nothing happened, because from their perspective, nothing did. But behavioral researchers have been leaving cameras running for 30 years. And what those cameras capture, hour by hour, heartbeat by heartbeat, is one of the most disturbing findings in animal psychology. Your dog isn't just missing you when you're gone. Something specific is happening in their brain, and it starts before you even close the door. In 2010, researchers at the University of Milan installed cameras in 23 homes and simply walked out. What they captured was this. Barking and whining began at an average of 3 minutes and 15 seconds after departure. Destructive behavior, chewing, scratching, destroying, within 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That's how long it takes before the shoes are at risk. But here's what most people never find out. That frantic phase eventually quiets down. The barking fades. The scratching stops. And if you came home to a silent house with nothing destroyed, you'd assume your dog had settled. That it hadn't. What the camera showed was that as vocalization decreased, panting increased. Heart rate stayed elevated. The dog didn't calm down. It shifted from one expression of distress to a quieter one. And then, every 23 to 28 minutes, there was a new spike. A burst of movement, more pacing, more vocalization. Then quiet. Then another spike. Not settling. Cycling. The whole time you were gone. Compare that to what cameras captured in dogs without separation anxiety. Dogs studied by Swedish researchers at the University of Agricultural Sciences who were left alone for up to 4 hours. Those dogs spent approximately 97% of their time in passive behavior. Lying down. Resting. Waiting. Not distressed. Not cycling. The difference between those two groups wasn't breed. It wasn't age. It wasn't genetics. The research points to one variable above almost everything else. What the dog has been taught to expect. In the 1980s, veterinary behaviorists Borkelt and Voith documented something that's been confirmed many times since. Dogs with separation anxiety often begin showing measurable stress responses while their owner is still in the house. Not when the door closes. Before the bag comes out. Through simple repetition, dogs learn to read your entire departure routine. Backwards. You check your phone. You put on your shoes. You glance at the time. Each of those actions, repeated hundreds of mornings in a row, has become a signal. And the signal means one thing: that I'm about to be alone. By the time you reach the door, some dogs are already panting. Now, for years the standard advice has been to desensitize your dog to these cues. Pick up your keys randomly, put your shoes on and sit back down, break the chain. But researchers at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona reviewed this evidence in 2014 and found it more complicated than anyone expected. For some dogs, making departures unpredictable doesn't reduce the fear, it increases it. Because the problem was never the keys. The problem is the uncertainty about what happens after you leave. Your dog isn't afraid of your shoes. They're afraid you're not coming back. The Royal Veterinary College ran a study called Generation Pup, following 145 dogs from adoption through their first 6 months of life. They were specifically looking for what predicted separation-related problems, and they found something that surprised a lot of trainers. Emotional goodbyes didn't cause it. Long farewells, big hugs at the door, the whole 5-minute production, no significant effect on outcomes. What mattered was the return. Dogs whose owners came home to find damage and responded with visible upset, raised voices, prolonged reactions, were 6 times more likely to develop separation-related behaviors. 6 times. Here's the thing. The dog cannot connect your frustration to the chair it destroyed 4 hours ago. There's no chain of causation available to them over that time window. What the dog connects your frustration to is your arrival. And gradually, your arrival becomes something to brace for. A dog that's anxious about you coming home is a dog that's more anxious about you leaving. Both ends of the absence get linked. You walk out, they panic. You walk back in, they panic again, for different reasons. The entire day becomes a loop of anticipatory stress. At some point, almost everyone gets the same suggestion: get a second dog. It has essentially no support in the research. A 2021 study of 77 dogs found that male dogs in multi-dog households actually vocalized more when left alone than single dogs. Because the separation isn't about loneliness in a general sense. It's about the absence of one specific person. A second dog doesn't fill that gap. It just means two dogs in the house having different problems. And somewhere, a neighbor is having a very long week. This is the part that gets missed most often. You come home, the house is intact, your dog is lounging on the sofa with an expression that says nothing in particular happened. You assume everything was fine. Might not have been. In the 1960s, Martin Seligman ran experiments that became foundational to all of psychology. Dogs exposed to unavoidable shocks, and later, when escape was possible, they didn't try. They lay down. Accepted it. He called it learned helplessness, the idea that organisms stop acting when experience teaches them their actions don't change outcomes. In 2016, Seligman revised that theory. Passivity isn't something animals learn. It's the brain's default state under prolonged inescapable stress. What has to be actively built is the belief that your behavior can change the situation. A dog that stops barking after an hour hasn't accepted the situation. It has stopped believing its behavior matters. And there's a more recent, unsettling layer. A 2019 study found that in severely anxious dogs, long-term cortisol, measured from hair samples reflecting months of hormonal accumulation, was sometimes lower than in calmer dogs. Not because they were less stressed. Because their stress system had been running so long, it had started to burn out. The dog that seems fine might be the dog you need to worry about most. In 2019, a team at Linköping University in Sweden measured long-term cortisol levels in 58 dog owner pairs. Not the cortisol spike of a bad moment, the slow hormonal accumulation over weeks and months, captured in hair. The levels were synchronized. Stressed owner, stressed dog. Calm owner, calm dog. When researchers looked at the direction of that relationship, which one was driving the other, the answer was clear. The owner's cortisol predicted the dog's, not the reverse. This means a dog already carrying a chronically elevated stress baseline doesn't start the separation from neutral. They start it from a deficit. The 8 hours you're gone aren't happening in isolation. They're happening on top of everything that's already accumulated. The industry around separation anxiety is enormous. Pheromone diffusers, calming supplements, anxiety wraps, white noise machines. Most owners have tried at least one. Most will tell you the results were somewhere between modest and nothing. That's because most of those products treat the 8 hours you're gone. The actual point of intervention is the other 16. The most rigorous placebo-controlled studies found that pheromone diffusers, sold under brand names you've definitely seen at the pet store, showed no significant improvement in barking, scratching, whining, or heart rate. The TV left on shows no measurable effect versus silence. Puzzle toys provide minutes of engagement. For severely anxious dogs, they can actually backfire. Once the food is gone, the dog registers that you're still gone and the real reaction begins. What does have consistent evidence is graduated exposure. Not leaving for 5 minutes and hoping for the best. Starting with seconds. Walk to the door. Come back in. Touch the handle. Come back in. Build a history of return so incrementally that the dog's nervous system never gets a chance to spike. Feels almost absurdly slow. Standing at your own front door for 30 seconds doesn't feel like training. Feels like nothing. But what you're actually doing is providing enough repetitions of the same sequence, you leave, you come back, that the dog's prediction system starts to update. Once a dog can tolerate roughly 40 minutes of absence without distress, progress to 4 or 8 hours tends to follow relatively quickly. The 40-minute mark isn't special. It's just the point at which the dog has accumulated enough evidence to shift what it expects. 4 more severe cases, a 229-dog clinical trial found that fluoxetine combined with behavior modification produced 73% improvement, compared to 51% for behavior modification alone. And crucially, treated dogs shifted what researchers called their cognitive bias, their tendency to interpret ambiguous situations pessimistically, toward a more neutral reading. The medication doesn't sedate them. It makes their brain more capable of forming new beliefs. Which is the whole point. Some dogs wait. Genuinely wait, resting, occasionally checking the water bowl, completely unbothered. Some dogs cycle through distress in 20-minute intervals for the entire duration of your absence. Some go quiet in a way that looks fine. And isn't. And almost none of them connect what they're experiencing to anything you did wrong, or anything you can fix with a toy or a plug-in diffuser. What they're responding to is the absence of a specific nervous system. Yours. The one that their own nervous system has been calibrated against month by month, until your cortisol and theirs move in the same direction. The dogs that struggle most aren't badly trained. They just haven't yet learned, not in their brain but in their nervous system, that the door opening and the door closing are the same event. Just in different order.